Conscious that we've heard some really interesting speeches this morning, and we have run a little bit over time, so we haven't got quite so long for questions as we'd hoped. Are there any questions to kick off from the floor?
Thank you very much, panel, for this morning, and a couple of the points that were being picked up, I think particularly from Dido, thank you, was the commercialisation about about broadband in the UK. There's lots of choice just now, but the more ISPs that start delivering content is going to squeeze out the smaller ISPs that are in the market space. It's going to remove choice in the market. So we're going to get into a circle that reduces choice and quality of broadband in the market space. And we're a business-to-business ISP, but we already see the impact that something like iPlayer and streaming video has in our network at peak times, and we shouldn't be seeing that because the model is completely different. You're in a domestic marketplace rather than a business marketplace. How do you see that commercialisation for small niche business-to-business providers playing in the ISP arena, or do you see us being squeezed out into the future?
Two thoughts. I think it's hugely important that the regulatory framework that has created the market in the UK today is sustained for the next 10 years. And beyond. So I think one of the key requirements to ensure there is healthy competition from small and medium-sized ISPs as well is that Ofcom is doing the job they've done in the last decade to make sure that environment is there. I think that in this I would count myself as relatively a small company compared to BT, 10 times larger than me, or Sky. I think that it's important that we don't all convince ourselves that we have to own the rights to the Premier League to compete in this market. I don't think you do need to. I think that there is sufficient innovation, and actually, certainly my B2B customers tell me that it is the service that matters to them every bit as much as anything else. And I think there is a real niche for small and medium-sized B2B providers to help. The more the technology becomes so sophisticated, the more business customers just want someone else to sort it out for them. And I think that gives your business a real edge, actually, over bigger, clunkier operations.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Trevor Davis from ISP Timiko. It's a bit of a devil's advocate question, this, but how much do you see mobile broadband eating into the market share of fixed broadband?
The facts are that fixed broadband will always offer a better speed than mobile, even with the evolution of LTE. But I think a combination, particularly in rural areas, or depending on what people want to use. So there's certain things that, as Dido and Liv were saying, that drive certain types of usage. But depending on your usage profile, I think that there's no need for fixed connections to the home if you want to live within the bandwidth of LTE. So I don't think LTE is a direct competitor to fixed broadband, but it does provide a capability that's much more mobile but easier to connect to for certain types of usage in certain types of areas.
Any other questions? Yes, gentleman there.
Hi, my name is Peter Cox of UM Labs. We've heard a lot about the benefits, the business benefits that broadband can bring, but there was no comment on the security aspects of using these services for business. What advice would you give to a company adopting that service?
To anyone, or just... Sorry, who was that directed to? I'm happy to have first. The evolution of security services is running at the same pace as the evolution of our other services, particularly now for enterprise with bring your own device. I think that's changed the standard corporate wrap around data and security. So there are a number of products that are now out for that kind of capability that provides a level of protection. So I think there are two things. One, there's the evolution of data security products, but also I think it's time for us to refresh policy in terms of what truly is data that needs to be secure and what isn't. And we run quite an extensive capability in our business in terms of BYOD, which is looking at both. So we're adopting some really neat technology that provides protection wherever, down to the individual. But also we're taking a clean look at our policies. I also run security for our business, and challenge I have for our security team is they have to somehow lead the revolution that questions the very standards and capabilities and approaches that's got our security to where it is today. So no doubt it's a challenge, but it's as at the forefront of innovation as any other of the aspects and capabilities of our industry.
The thing I'd add is most of the security issues that are genuinely real and happen are due to human beings rather than technology. So don't be baffled by the technology. Being able to explain to your employees in simple English what they should and shouldn't do is actually, if anything, more important than the sophisticated tools that are absolutely available that underpin it. If you don't know that you shouldn't send confidential data to an email, then no amount of screening is going to stop you doing it. So it's about the human beings as much as the technology.
And that's the policy thing that
Did you want to add anything to that, Liv?
No, they were two comprehensive answers. Why extend when the job's done?
Okay. Next question?
Hi, James Gardner from Power Ethernet. I'm very excited about the growth of the broadband in terms of the statistics, but one of the key issues of delivering it is how do you create a really robust network within the home? And sometimes wireless isn't suitable, but if you've got these high-speed connections coming into the home, how are you going to deliver a whole home solution? I'd be interested in hearing your views.
Can you pick that up, Liv?
It's a brilliant question, right? So you can have 100 meg, 300 meg, a gig coming in, but if the wireless devices of today max at 15 or 40, then does someone get the benefit? But the world evolves, doesn't it, right? So, I'm not proposing that we're going to change the walls or the functions of the houses in the UK or internationally. I think what we'll find is that I'm sure if you're Apple, if you're Samsung, if you're other device makers, you're factoring that in now into the devices that you're building. You're not going to build the same limitations. I'm sure if you're us, you're spending time making sure that with all of your communications providers, you're talking about it, you're brainstorming it, you're educating on what are the standards that we should be shooting for as an industry, because it's around industry standards evolving to keep pace with the technology, the pipes that are going in. And I'm sure if you're a talk, a Sky, or a retail, you're mulling over how do you educate your customers to what to do how. So there are certain types of activities that you might want to do in certain different ways, and I'm sure that's the kind of conversations that are probably happening, but I guess Dido can build on from that one. But I think it's a total industry shared dilemma, that one, and I think you're right. It is the only negative that I see in all my post-bag of complaints on fibre. So no one ever says, it's not what you said, everything's on the tin. We lose all of the angst of first-generation broadband when somebody moves on to fibre in terms of the speed that comes in. The angst is, how do I now get myself set up wirelessly to be able to make the most of what is an amazing speed coming into the home?
Did you want to add to that?
I think I will repay the compliment.
Yeah, okay.
Very comprehensive.
I agree. Yeah, sir.
Akil Bashir from Telecom Egypt. My question is about the growth of mobile broadband and how is it limited by the spectrum availability?
It's certainly challenged by spectrum availability, and I think some of the stuff that Stuart talked about in terms of the Olympics, I think the Olympics is a fantastic example of how design can help you with spectrum limitations. So if you just take one operator working with Stuart, we've got enough data capacity in the stadium that covers a city the size of York, which for any non-UK resident is not, but it's a fairly sizable UK city, and that's about innovative design to make best use of spectrum. So yes, spectrum's challenged, particularly as growth, and we're all in the mobile industry without opening up the debate, eagerly awaiting the release of LTE spectrum. But in the meantime, design, like the stuff that Stuart talked about in iWireless, and the Olympics is a great example of how the mobile industry has come together to solve a problem when I first started looking at it 4 years ago. My best engineer said couldn't be solved, and here we are 4 years later having solved it. So design can help to a certain extent, but we're all eagerly awaiting more spectrum.
Yes. I think the issue for spectrum is key. I mean, the Obama administration has said that they'll release 100 megs of spectrum. Here in the UK, we're planning to release a lot more spectrum over the next few years. I think any country thinking about how to drive mobile broadband is going to have to get their policy issues across, how much spectrum to release and when. The fact that TD-LTE advanced, you will only get the most out of it if you've got 20 meg channels. We're currently testing 40 meg channels. this is where you're going to drive real capacity in the future. And so you've not just got to think about how do we get spectrum out there, you've got also to think how you package it to allow people to get the maximum use out of it. You've also got to think about TDD and FDD, because TDD is more efficient for data, and if you can move to that standard, you should think about it. So lots of things to think about, but the main thing is get more spectrum out there and get it out there quickly. Otherwise you won't build powerful broadband networks. Next question. Yes.
Anthony Walker from Intellect. A committee of the House of Lords published a report very recently on broadband, and it contained what I thought rather radical idea, which was that maybe the time has come to start thinking about making a permanent shift and moving broadcast television across onto our broadband networks, and actually starting to plan now, admittedly in the long term, but for the switch off of our digital terrestrial television, so that we could then release that spectrum for potentially other more productive and more financially lucrative uses. Is this madness, or is there perhaps the gem of an idea here that could put the UK on a more radical path towards making better use of its available radio spectrum?
Who wants to pick that one up? Do you want to pick that up?
I think it's a very interesting idea, but it's very early days. You know, I think it's too soon to be asking that question, to be honest. I think, that it is, we're at the beginning of the journey of internet-delivered TV, rather than at a point at which you can say it's established in its time.
I think there's a lot more opportunity to use other spectrum, and the spectrum would advance the use of spectrum before we come down to switching off.
Yeah. I also think we've got to think about what mobile spectrum is going to be needed in the future, and you're going to tend to need smaller cells, and that's going to drive you up the frequency range, not down. Yeah. And so the more valuable spectrum frequencies in the future are up, not down. The other issue, if you look at Hong Kong, which is the most developed IPTV market in the world, we've been doing ITV-TV there for 5 years, and it's a complete ITV-TV market, but have we turned off the terrestrial stations? Absolutely not. Are we considering doing it? No. So I think we're a long, long way from knowing that our broadband networks are sufficiently connected to everybody, because television has to be universal. And if we've got one person not connected, it's very difficult to see how we're going to switch off the terrestrial. So I think we're a long way away from that, would be my view. We have time for one more question. Is there one more question? I have a green question if nobody else does. Okay, we've heard a little bit about green today. One of the issues, I think, for the industry as a whole is that we're going to be under pressure to be greener as we go forward. The consumer demands it, governments demand it. Do we think that we're doing enough as an industry to deal with that? And do we think that we're in danger of governments legislating to make us do more? Can I start with Naoki on that one, please?
Okay. So, unlike other telecom vendors, we are, battery storage supplier as well. We have developed the lithium battery for the mobile handsets, and recently we have developed the battery cell for the EV Nissan Leaf. Having said that, there is a lot of requirements by the telecom service provider to reduce the OPEX, especially on the energy part. And having said that, to get sort of smooth out the peak period of the power, we providing a storage. Battery storage, for the base stations, for example. And this will enable, a lot of, green and economical, solution to the operators for the operation of the network. This is one of the challenges we are doing right now.
Any thoughts on that?
Yes, green is immense, right? It's a huge subject. So I think to summarise it in 2 minutes probably does it limited justice. I'm sure there'll be legislation, but I think the answer is in what's part of it and what will it mean, again, is a longer, fascinating debate. So I think as an industry, what we have to do is, and I think we are doing actually collaboratively together, I think we are doing a lot. I think each of us individually are looking at the end-to-end supply chain and saying, how do you make that as green as possible? I think each of us individually and collaboratively are saying this is something that will help the economy become greener through less travel. And I think that certainly when you look at the aspirations for whether it's renewable energy, whether it's reducing emissions, there's strong, not just rhetoric, but strong evidence and strong results from all the major players that shows that everyone's taking it seriously. So I think it's one of the areas you would probably give us a good tick. Does that mean it's enough? It won't be, will it? We'll have to find new ideas and we'll have to keep going on the journey. But I think we could give ourselves a pretty good 8 out of 10 for getting out the starting blocks.
Okay. Derek, thoughts on that?
Fairly comprehensive answers. The other thing I think I would just mention is if you look at the UK mobile industry, we've gone from 5 networks to effectively 2. And green has got a double opportunity for us. One is clearly the sustainability issue that we take very seriously, but also the hard economics of how do you optimise the efficiency of rolling out networks. And I think from a mobile industry, we've gone pretty much as far as likely to go by getting down to 2 infrastructure. I see sharing of infrastructure just becoming much more commonplace. There's another element of attacking the green issue.
Are there any thoughts? No. Okay, well that draws this session to a close. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking our 7 speakers. I think it was a very, very interesting morning. So let's thank them if we please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.